Good evening. Good evening, PSC members. Thank you so much for that beautiful op-ed and the commentary. Thank you. And welcome, everyone, or welcome back to the 24-hour online action to save lives, save jobs, and save CUNY. I hope those of you who have taught your first class today had a good class and were able to start building the kind of connections with students that we all love and that fuel our work. And to those who are still awaiting their first class or whose work is not in the classroom, best wishes for the start of the term. Thank you to everyone who has contributed to today's event. It's been moving and angering and incredible, actually, to watch all during the day. And there's still 12 or more fabulous hours to go, so stay with us. But I think we need to start, and it's really where our last speaker left off, I think we need to start by acknowledging the shocking news coming out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, where Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by the police. And then armed vigilantes were apparently allowed to menace protesters, which led to the murder of 2 more people last night. With a lot of you today, I'm sure I'm saying this, how many times and in how many ways do all of us need to say Black Lives Matter? So many times in the history of this country, Black and anti-racist movements have inspired and taught other movements and shown everyone else how to create change. I'm hoping as we need change at CUNY and in New York, I'm hoping that something similar is happening now and that the brave, beautiful, and serious movement for an end to systemic racism will inspire other movements, including the labor movement and the movements many of us are trying to build right now. So it's a very good night to be together. We take up our fight at CUNY in a moment that really demands systemic change. I think you can't listen to today's many, many speakers without knowing that. The struggle we are waging right here is to save lives, save jobs, and save a university that should be a centerpiece of any reimagining or remaking of New York after this century-defining pandemic. And remaking CUNY not as an underfunded afterthought whose administrators too often bow down to demands for cuts and sometimes even turn to billionaire bankers for solutions. The solutions are within CUNY. They are right here. You saw them today. They're in the students, the faculty, and staff in struggle. Surely that's the lesson of today's last 8 or 9 hours and all the hours to come. What we've seen today in the huge array of voices and faces from the PSC is evidence of the richness and diversity of our member and the intellectual and political range, but also of our power. The capacious 24-hour format actually, and surprisingly to me, lets us do justice to something amazing that has been happening. Despite the stress of transforming our whole work lives, the stress and struggles to work at home while teaching our children and taking care of parents or friends, the grief and anger and loss, the enormous increase in CUNY's demands on our time and our workload, PSC members are responding to this moment not by retreating, but by getting involved in the work of the union in greater numbers than ever before. That's what we have to build on. That is our power and our strength. Thousands of people have participated in our in-person and online events. Hundreds have caravanned by bike and car. We had hundreds of bikes and cars in Brooklyn, in Queens, in Staten Island, in the Bronx. They've caravanned all over the 5 boroughs. Hundreds are involved in forcing CUNY to comply with its legal obligation to provide a safe workplace. We have many more people now involved in health and safety work on the ground than ever before. Others are working directly on their campuses for the change we need, or with PSC allies in Congress, in the state legislature. You'll hear some more about that in the city council and political organizations. Instead of a retreat, we have seen not only an advance, but an expansion. We need everyone. We have needed everyone because the tasks the union has set ourselves in this crisis are formidable. While all around us, many organizations, including CUNY management, are taking the position that the only way to go is to accept economic loss and austerity caused by COVID and to adjust to that as the new normal. I think the key to what the PSC is doing and trying to do is that we have refused to normalize that situation. We have refused not only to accept the cuts, but to accept that they're the only option. We've refused to normalize adjunct, quote, non-reappointments. They are adjunct layoffs. When you lose thousands of people, 3,000 people at once, that is a layoff. That's an exploitation of the horrible work system that CUNY has exploited in this crisis. We refuse to normalize the damage to our students and their lives for the damage to CUNY. And that's the issue at the root. And that's why this has been really a summer of struggle, as we've called it, and lots of you have lived that. And that's why I want to talk to you before the night is out, after a few other speakers, about what next steps we can take. You'll be hearing from others tonight, but I just want to give a quick recap of some of what the union has accomplished so far. At the start of the pandemic, the PSC forced CUNY to treat all faculty and staff in the same way and move us all to remote work to be safe. That was in March. The union pushed back on CUNY management's sloppy definition of essential workers and saved some members from unnecessary exposure to the virus. PSC members located PPE that was so valuable, so needed. We found them in our labs and storage closets, and we sent them to hospitals. Hundreds of PSC members responded to the union's call, and we formed a homework hotline, volunteering to provide daily and everyday weekend help to the children of nurses who were on the front lines, help with their schoolwork, because the nurses were not able to spend the time with them. We've gained, and you'll hear much more about legislative support. We helped with our national union, the AFT, to shape the CARES Act. And then, as you know, we've pursued a major lawsuit on behalf of the whole union and the adjuncts who were laid off because of that suit. We, and you will hear more about this, have introduced visionary new legislation to redefine CUNY, but to imagine it as the people's university it should be. We've involved Congress people, city council people, state legislators, some of whom you've seen today. We've won important adjustments at the bargaining table, forced CUNY to the table, repeatedly pushing them, and made some important gains for our members. And you've heard some of it. We just heard one tonight. With the support sometimes of the union, sometimes entirely on their own, more than 20 PSC members who sort of burst into print in the last 5 months, really helping to define this pandemic and this crisis, and over and over making the link between investment in CUNY and ending systemic racism and the resurgence and hope for the city. We've seen that as a theme explored and powerfully developed in all kinds of ways by our members. We filed hundreds of grievances and addressed hundreds of individual cases. And just today, I will be happy to say that at least on one campus, our pressure to reverse the adjunct layoffs is beginning to pay off. I've been told that the provost of Queensborough Community College announced that 130 adjuncts who had been laid off will be reappointed. And I know that's beginning to happen elsewhere, but not everywhere. Not everywhere, and we must continue to fight on that and every other issue. So I will turn it over to Andrea Vásquez, who's going to be joined by Mike Fabricant. And then I want to come back after some of our speakers and talk about where we go from here. But as we gather tonight, virtually, online, I think it's important to reflect on how much power we have developed through a huge array of actions, a huge outpouring of creativity and political desire. And we must build on that now. And it gives me hope for what we can do. So over to Andrea. Thank you. You're on mute, Andrea.
Okay, there I go. Okay, thanks everyone. This was great. What a great day. So glad to be talking to you. It was really terrific. Maybe we should do this more often. So I'm going to speak a little bit, and then Mike Fabricant is going to follow up. One of the things we saw today was the support we've received from New York State legislators. Yulin New and Andrew Gennardis, among others, spoke eloquently during the CUNY Rising Alliance New Deal for CUNY panel about their commitment to CUNY and their enthusiasm for supporting New Deal for CUNY legislation. Over the course of the summer, we've had scores of legislators sign on to public letters and send statements to Matos Rodriguez and Board Chair Thompson opposing the layoffs of adjuncts and in support of funding for CUNY. The Legislative Committee has held dozens of lobby calls asking legislators to support the many bills in Albany that would increase taxes on the rich and help save critical services like CUNY. This is but one important aspect of the work we must do to put pressure on the state and the city, and thanks to the work of the PSC Legislative Committee that we urge you to join. It's all thanks to the PSC Legislative Committee, so join. Most recently, Nancy Silverman, the PSC's Queens Political Action Committee coordinator, worked with Justina Jagelnica, Heather James, Jen Gabori, Luke Elliott Negri, and the Office of Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney to write a letter to Matos and Thompson about layoffs at CUNY and the need to spend the CARES money they secured to re-employ laid-off adjuncts. 8 New York City and Long Island congresspeople signed on to this letter that has already been delivered to the Chancellor and received press. And of course, in the spring, AOC also wrote to the Chancellor. Additionally, before the summer, nearly 80 New York State senators and assembly members penned a similar letter that also went to CUNY. Barbara Bowen has continually met and spoken to many legislators in DC, New York State, and New York City, advocating for CUNY and stopping New York City cuts to CUNY. President Bowen and PSC leaders testified before the City Council and the New York State Senate and Assembly about the disastrous impact COVID has had on our membership and potentially on the future of CUNY. Also, over the last 2 weeks, we were invited to join with CUNY Rising Alliance, who organized 2 meetings with a dozen Democratic primary winners and insurgents. Jen Gabori did a CUNY 101 with them as we now begin to identify new, strong CUNY champions. PSC has also worked with a coalition of unions, the Budget Justice Coalition, and our New York State affiliate, NYSET. Together, we've been pressing for taxing the billionaires, supporting each other's actions and press conferences, and making joint statements, including doing outreach that helped garner more than 100 state senators to sign a statement of principles for fiscal and social responsibility during the COVID-19 crisis and beyond. PWA, DC 37, NISNA, RWDSU, UAW, 1199, PEF, and many others were in this work together. Some of these folks were on the 2 o'clock roundtable discussion as well. So what must we all do now to strengthen this work? First, of course, there's a presidential election. We want members to join us in working with the AFT and Working Families Party, who are both making calls and possibly making trips to support work in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Florida. Of course, for the WFP, it's important to support them so they can stay on the ballot line. Second, Senator Andrew Gennardis has been a champion for CUNY and has been involved from the start with New Deal for CUNY. He's in a tightly contested race in Brooklyn, and so if you want to get involved with that or learn more, please be in touch with Tiffany Brown and Bettina Damiani at the PSC. And lastly, there's a New Deal for CUNY sign-on letter of support. Maybe you've signed it earlier, but if not, please go to cunyrisingalliance.org so we can contact you, not only for your signature, but to be a part of what we mean to be a massive campaign in which we must aim high, wage a valiant struggle, build momentum and power, and bring billions into CUNY. So we'll now hear from Mike with a little more about the New Deal for CUNY legislation and what it means to all of us. Thanks.
I wanted to thank Andrea and all James Davis, Luke and others, George. There have been many hands in putting this together, and I think they all should need to be acknowledged in a relationship to this very important day that's been created. New Deal for CUNY is, as Barbara pointed out, I do believe it is visionary legislation. It has about 5 or 6 different elements for those of you not familiar with it. One, it answers the question when it becomes legislation about tuition for CUNY, because it would be free once passed. It speaks to the need for mental health counselors and advisors, because the ratios at this university are far higher than nationally accepted standards. It demands, or would incorporate into the legislation, have to transition from legislation to a campaign. It would incorporate the need for 5,500 full-time faculty, the same number of faculty ultimately that we had in 1973 or 4, which was about 11,500 to 12,000 full-time faculty, while at the same time dedicating numbers of those lines to both part-time faculty and hiring hiring on the basis of diversity, Black and brown, Asian hires in relationship to the university's mandate and its own mission to diversify its faculty labor force. And then as well, what we're looking to do is correct the wage structure through the legislation and create a new set of standards for part-time faculty, and finally address the capital issue. That is capital construction and repair. Why? Why this? Why now? One could argue that, well, you know, this is ridiculous. We're in a crisis, an economic crisis, and you, the PSC, are going to propose this aspirational, visionary legislation. And the answer is yes. This is precisely the time to introduce this legislation, as comparable legislation was introduced in the 30s when Franklin Roosevelt was governor, and transformed many sectors of the public sector, while also investing simultaneously and specifically in CUNY and building Brooklyn College. This is the moment. It's a deep crisis and it's a deep opportunity for us, and we need to capitalize on that. We are going to propose that the money, as Andrew Gennardis pointed out, we've been in conversations with NYSET, be drawn from economic development money. So a substantial part of the state budget. The fact is that if we were able to claim some of those dollars for CUNY, which is only right given the role the CUNY plays in building out the economy of the city, New York City and the region, then in fact we'd have more than enough money to address all of the different pieces of the CUNY Rising legislation. We've done this work, and this legislation was not crafted only by the PSC. And I think it's important to note that. It was crafted with student groups, it was crafted with grassroots groups. NYCC, for example, has been central to this. USS, NYPIRG, Young Invincibles, and I could go on and on. But the fact is this has been a collective effort, and it will be a collective campaign that we'll need to wage. This is probably the most ambitious program we've ever set out on achieving. That is the New Deal for CUNY. It's a huge undertaking, but it's a huge crisis, and it's a huge threat to the university. It's time for us now to sort of mark a moment in time when we essentially are organizing and campaigning, not for crumbs, although we have organized and campaigned for more than that, and we have had many gains, but to campaign and organize for full funding for this university. And that's what the New Deal for CUNY represents. And we're working with NYSET presently to write out and build out the legislation and have it introduced later in the year. So that's the New Deal for CUNY. And I think what we've seen so far is that there'll be substantial legislative support for it. And I also think there'll be substantial student, faculty, and other support as we see the consequences of defunding and the gains associated with substantial investment in the university, in a faculty, in a student body, in a staff that deserve that kind of investment and need it.
Great. Thanks, Mike. This is great. So we're going to have a little interlude right now, a little video interlude. It's only about 3 minutes long. It's a video produced by Tammy Gold and her peeps, and James Davis, I think, participated in the work on that video because it's based on an action that happened at Brooklyn College during the summer. So this is a short video showing some of the highlights of that action.
PSC folks.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, these spineless actions got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho.
Our demands are not just student demands. Our demands include the hiring of all adjuncts that got fired.
What are the ways that you are going to make sure that your students are safe? Your students of color are safe. Your adjunct professors are safe.
Yeah. Anyone who gets called back to work, their workplace will be safe, or else you won't come back to work.
How can we have a quality experience education if our adjunct professors are constantly in fear of their jobs?
Keep pushing, because all of these issues I've been dealing with for 3 years. 3 whole years of my 4 years here in Brooklyn College talking about anti-racism, talking about anti-blackness, talking about my department not being funded. We have 4 professors teaching a whole department, and then we have adjuncts that just got fired. So how are our departments gonna live?
I join my voice to Black faculty and staff organization to denounce and condemn austerity. To denounce and condemn anti-blackness and systemic racism at Brooklyn College.
Budgets are moral documents. They represent our values and our priorities. How dare you ask me year after year, ask us, why don't you increase your class sizes? But we can't. That's not how pedagogy works. How dare you, Brooklyn College administration? How dare you, CUNY? How dare you, Governor Cuomo?
Cut COVID, not CUNY!
You know, direct action works. We will not tolerate, right, any more of a racist institution. We are expecting an anti-racist plan of action to be implemented starting immediately.
I'll go over to Nivedita, who's going to introduce our speakers, additional speakers.
Thanks, Barbara. Hello, PSC. What an incredible day. Thank you for joining us as we organize and fight for our university and our students. In this segment, we will hear from union leaders from across CUNY on 3 key issues for our members, relating to reopening the university, to class size, and to protecting adjunct jobs. These 3 issues encapsulate the challenges confronting our members and therefore our university and our students. The question of safety and the safe return to campuses is of course foremost in the minds of our faculty and staff. The vast majority of our members will continue to work from home, but 10 to 25% of the workforce may be asked to report to work at their work site. For those members now and for the future, we need the assurance that CUNY buildings are safe. So far, CUNY has refused to provide us with the information necessary to establish that it has met its contractual obligation to provide a safe place for employment. We will fight and win on our fundamental and contractual right to safe work site, a right more urgent now than ever. Job security is almost as central as the need for safe workplaces. In the midst of a pandemic, when the need for financial security and healthcare is paramount, CUNY laid off nearly 3,000 adjuncts. Several hundred of them lost health insurance. This is beyond unconscionable. Let's be clear. As long as CUNY is allowed to exploit contingent workers and fire them at will, no faculty member with or without tenure is safe. Our fight to restore the employment of every laid-off adjunct and against the exploitative practice of contingency will continue. The issue of increasing class size confronts both adjunct and full-time faculty, but more importantly, it amounts to a serious challenge for our students. CUNY management is cynically using the move to online classes as an opportunity to increase class size across departments and campuses. While research shows online classes should have fewer students, 12 is an optimal number. In CUNY, classes have ballooned to 40 and 50 and sometimes even 70 students. This, of course, increases the workload of our already overworked faculty, but more pertinently, it deeply compromises the quality of education that we offer our students. CUNY is refusing to bargain with us on the impact of class size, even though they are legally obligated to bargain. But we are fighting back and will be expanding and building our resistance to increasing class sizes. Together, the issues of job security and safety and good teaching and learning conditions represent the vision of the university we and our students deserve. So now let us hear from PSC leaders from across CUNY who are at the forefront of these battles. I'm first going to ask Tina Moore, who is the chapter chair at Hunter Campus Schools, to address PSC members. Tina?
You're muted, Tina. Hi, Tina, you're on mute.
I just asked if you can hear me. That answers that question. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. As she mentioned, I'm the chapter chair at Hunter College Campus Schools. And while, as we've heard today, I believe maybe a smallish percentage of CUNY has been asked to return, but the campus schools has been asked to return, like 100% of us have been asked to return to our campus. I'm a teacher. I want to get back into the struggle to teaching our students. I want to get back to normal, but the building that we have been asked to come back to, 94th Street, has a terrible history, a terrible design, and it scares us. It scares our membership. We and through the whole process of reopening plan, there has been little to no engagement with our union on the reopening plan. They have given us time to answer questions and to ask questions, but they haven't engaged the union at all in the development of this reopening plan. The creative teachers that we have at our school, none of them have been asked to be a part of this reopening plan. So now we're dealing with a building that can't even handle MERV 13 filters, and also and this lack of trust that we have in our administration, because we do not trust that our building is safe to return, and also this lack of engagement. So we are asking for a safe return. We want assurances that that the buildings, whatever building, they have offered other buildings. This is sort of late breaking news. They have offered, there's construction going on at 94th Street. I have a feeling that construction is going to continue. And now they have offered the Hunter College campus as a possible work site for us. They've offered the Silberman building that has always been on the table, but none of these buildings have we had the opportunity as a union with qualified inspectors, qualified health and safety people to come walk through the building, give us assurances that where we are going to return to is safe, and also give us assurances that the plan that we are going to return to is safe for all of our members. So that's what we're asking for. We want a safe return. And until we can get that, we want to teach our students remotely. But we do really, really want to get back to teaching our students. So that's where our struggle has been. That's where the fight has been. And I just thank all of you in your support and for our safe return to work. Excuse me.
Thank you so much, Tina, for that very important perspective from the Hunter College schools. Next, I'll call on Jeannette Batiz. She is the vice chair of the PSC CLT chapter.
Thank you. Good evening, my fellow brothers and sisters from CUNY support. I'm here to talk about behalf of our fellow CLT. We are chapter about 1,100 strong college laboratory technicians. During the pandemic, CLT stepped up. They did large-scale online events. They did remote IT. They converted lab to visual platforms. They helped professor and teach professor the new technology. They revised manual labs, prep procedures. We CLT are classified as essential personnel, otherwise reported to campus for work since the pandemic phase, all without approval by the college safety plans. As a result of this, CLTs had contracted COVID and still suffering from the symptoms, trying to manage a long-term effect daily virus while continue to support their department. There are some examples of how CLT worked to report during COVID-19. All of this performed without additional compensation, showing once again CLT are the last chain and sacrificial. By my experience yesterday going to Bronx Community College, I wore my PPE. I had to be in the building where the ventilation was not great. For 5 to 7 hours, I was not able to drink. I was afraid to remove my PPE, my mask, because there were people around, and trying to keep distance was very difficult because they were trying to prepare different things. Unfortunately, there was an accident in the lab where the freezer, somebody had unplugged it. And when I decided to do the inventory and I opened the door, there was mold all over the place. I had to walk out, leave, and go into my office. And I wanted to cry in tears because it's work of months, labor. And it's about $10,000 from the department that invested by freezing cultures and all kinds of items that we freeze. I mean, I was upset all day yesterday. However, we still continue. The CLT is on the low pay. And we are absolutely essential workers. CLTs can be found across campuses, about 150 departments that they work in constantly. They do different things in different departments. And one thing is impaired that CLT have a seat when there's conversations for safety, for workload, for proper safety levels are great importance. We demand transparency, committee, and diversity in conclusion across a campus. In the unit, it's already written that a CLT should be in the opening plan, and it was not in BCC, in some of the other campuses as well. The nature of the CLT work hence required contact with students, take samples. They teach and study occupational therapy, medical technology program. They got dental programs. So a lot of these programs require CLT to be in contact with their students and intimate, so because it's required for their certification and licenses. CLTs are essential to core mission of the university. And what we do absolutely is critical to our student in supporting our academic, administrative, research domain to maintain CUNY the greatest for the university of this world. We stand in solidarity with our PSC colleagues, now returning to campus until our unit demands are met for safety. We all call upon faculties, department chairs to support the CLT and not allow us to be used as a rag while CUNY figures it out. A quote from the PSC, from President Bowen, says CLTs are backbones of the CUNY of science and technology programs. Without the CLT, sorry about that. And we're the ones that grow permanent in fields and will not be possible, nor will CUNY will be able to help a student into the 21st century career with scientific, technician, technology, and technique. CLTs, has President Bowen said, we are here to work with our faculty and our students in every campus. End quote. The bridge between faculty and students fill the gap. CLTs connect the quick dots between students and faculty for our students to be successful. CLT educates students marrying the theory of techniques and application across campuses. Brothers and sisters, we have to fight together. We have to come in unity, support one another, and go to the front line. Put on your armor, and we're here to fight. We're here to go forth. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannette. Thank you so much. And both Tina and Jeannette offered us very important perspectives on issues of safety and reopening. Now we'll hear from David Hatchett from Medgar Evers College. David is also on the PSC Executive Committee, and David will speak on the issue of class size, increasing class size. David?
Hey, good evening, brothers and sisters. You all are stretching my limited public speaking skills. This is my second time today, so you have to bear with me. But anyway, I represent Medgar Evers College. A lot of people don't realize that Medgar Evers College sits at the hub of the largest contiguous community of African people of African descent in the United States. 5 neighborhoods of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Crown Heights, East New York, Brownsville, Flatbush. Man, Medgar Evers is one of the centers of that. It represents the aspirations of people trying to move from one point in life to another. Children of immigrants, children of native-born blacks, working class children, working class adults. However, though, when the COVID crisis hit, the administration came to the labor leaders, came to the Medgar PSC labor leaders and told us that we had to tolerate 43 people in a class. We found that utterly unacceptable. We're in the middle of summer. We're trying to figure out which way to go, and we get hit with this. And they tell us, well, don't worry about it. We'll think about it. 3 weeks later, they come back and tell us, no, we decided that we're going to increase the class load to 52. 2 weeks later, they come back, and then we tell them, no, that's absolutely unacceptable. And then they come back and tell us it's back to 43. I mean, people don't understand how devastating this can be. In my own classes, I have students who live in shelters. I have students who were marginal high school students. I have students who haven't been to school 20, 25, 30 years, 10, 15 years, who work 2 jobs. And for them, intimate relationships with their professors is absolutely key to their success. In the face of all of this, the Medgar administration has refused to relent on class sizes and has gone so far as to dismiss a third of its adjunct population. But this is not just the Medgar issue. This is a larger community issue. Because if this is allowed to happen at Medgar, it will happen someplace else as well. This could become the linchpin for a new form of exploitation that could gobble up the whole of the CUNY system. How people are being warehoused in these classrooms, being neglected, being cast to the side. It's almost like educational neglect because people are being put in situations in which they can't possibly succeed. So having said all this, I think that it is absolutely essential that we fight these budget cuts, that we fight these layoffs. This cannot go forward. And it is affecting most deeply the most disaffected parts of the Medgar bargaining system to the greatest extent. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We'll now hear from James Davis, who, if you have been listening today to the program, you would know very well. James is chapter chair at Brooklyn College and is also on the executive committee of the union. James?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be with you. As Nivedita said, I teach at Brooklyn College, and for us classroom faculty, the issue of class size, as David was just mentioning, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where our working conditions and student learning conditions intersect most forcefully. And you know, listening to Jeannette as well, it reminded me that the issue of class size radiates out to everyone who's involved in student support and academic support capacities. So briefly, what I wanted to say was the way that faculty members on my campus have responded so far to the increases in class size. And also, I wanted, though, to begin by noting that as a backdrop to all this, I think it's important for us to keep in view that even as we speak, you know, the Chancellor and the Board of Trustees are still sitting on $132 million in CARES Act funding, institutional funding, above and beyond student funding. And so when we think about cuts to sections, adjunct layoffs, and the consequent increases in class size, I think we also need to consider that the decision was made to hold back on dispersing CARES Act fund that's already been allocated to the university. There are a lot of ways that the university could spend that money, but one way would be to contain the runaway class sizes we're seeing now and to reappoint folks who have been laid off. So when I asked my colleagues what's the impact been, the department chairs, what's the impact been of the cuts on class size, you know, they sort of responded as if I was asking a silly question and I didn't understand mathematics. So one department chair said, well, basically when the administration told us that the target was 25% fewer sections, which is what they were told in late May, cut 25% of your offerings. Well, to accommodate the same number of students, that requires an increase in class size. So our average class size has gone up from less than 40 up to the mid 40s. Another department chair told me that by default, due to the cuts in adjunct faculty, we have had to increase class size. Students require courses to meet their major requirements, and we are heavily over-enrolled. And then last, a third department chair said, for the administration to force larger class sizes and budget cuts with no substantial proof of decreased enrollment is outrageous, especially considering the factors of online education. Workload on our end has increased threefold. Equally important, the quality of instruction and educational value for our students suffer tremendously. So this revisits the issue that Nivedita raised before, which is this is both the question of class size is both a labor issue and it's a question of educational value. It's one thing for the university to say that we provide access, right, to the working people of New York, and it's another thing to deprive them of the quality that should accompany that access. And of course, one can teach large class sizes, but that is not a totally elastic relationship. As anyone who is taught in the classroom knows, you can't stuff the classrooms. So I think I would just conclude by remarking that none of us got into this line of work because we wanted to work in a diploma mill. And I think David is raising this issue when he talks about warehousing students and cranking them through classes. We care deeply not only about our students, but also the quality of education that we can provide. And that is diminished, compromised severely if we don't address collectively the steps that our administrations are taking to fill more and more students into those classes. So I think I'll just end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James. This is very important. We clearly have to wage a major battle on this front. So thanks, David and James, for speaking on class size. We now move to the third subject on adjunct layoffs. We will watch a short video from where Rosa Squillacote will speak. She is the VP for part-time personnel, the PSC VP for part-time personnel, and she teaches at Hunter College and at the Graduate Center. Rosa could not make it here because of childcare responsibilities, but some of you've seen her earlier today. So if we can watch the video by Rosa, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Rosa Squillacote, and I'm the Vice President for Part-Timers at the PSC, and I've been an adjunct at CUNY for 8 years. I know it feels like years ago now, but I was remembering back in March when COVID first hit, spending weeks talking with other adjuncts, furiously trying to catch up on best practices for online pedagogy, being terrified for our students, being terrified for ourselves and our families. I remember trying to reorganize my home into a study while I kept hearing about more and more people I knew getting sick or dying. This spring was a traumatic experience for all of us who went through it. But during the pandemic, I've been lucky to have job security. I had a summer class and I had classes lined up to teach in the fall. So I've been settling into this new normal. But for thousands of adjuncts across CUNY, the new normal is getting laid off. Despite numerous reports finding that successful online pedagogy requires smaller than typical class sizes, which should mean more classes and more jobs for adjuncts, CUNY made the decision to lay off about 3,000 adjuncts, or about 1/10 of the PSC's membership. This, despite the fact that CUNY received over $250 million from the CARES Act, which stipulated that efforts must be made to continue paying workers. CUNY's negligence about the well-being of adjuncts is well known, but the cruelty of laying off thousands of people and leaving hundreds without health insurance during an ongoing global pandemic is obscene. This is why one of the union's central demands is to save jobs. We demand that CUNY reinstate every person who is laid off and ensure that they keep their benefits and health insurance. The union has been active this whole summer fighting for our members. We've been making phone calls to members to have one-on-one conversations. We've been organizing regular protest actions over Zoom and in person, including 2 car caravans, one of which was citywide. We've sued CUNY over its failure to meet the CARES Act requirement of continuing to pay workers. That lawsuit is ongoing and in the early stages. And we are organizing for a new deal for CUNY, legislation which will provide much needed funding to the entire CUNY system, including wage parity for adjuncts. And now, at the start of the semester, CUNY has not reinstated anyone. So the union is preparing for escalating actions. It is more important than ever that we stand together in solidarity and we demand jobs back for our union brothers and sisters. We are still in a crisis, and our best bet for surviving is to stick with the union and stand up for each other and with each other in solidarity. Save lives, save jobs, save CUNY.
That was a very beautiful and powerful message from Rosa. Last but certainly not the least, we'll hear from Angel Martinez, also on the same subject of adjunct layoffs. Angel is an adjunct activist at Bronx Community College. Angel?
How do we protect union rights? The 3-year contract was a hard-won union victory. But guess what? Now that's even in danger. At Bronx Community College, we have a big problem right now. Last spring, 86 adjunct faculty were becoming eligible for a 3-year contract after having worked 10 consecutive semesters within the same department at Bronx Community College. Of those 86, 36 were not rehired. And that's why we're in danger of having overloaded classrooms and too few professors. 36 did not get hired, even though they were already eligible. The department personnel budget committees already said that they're okay to go. Bronx Community College said no to those 36. 19 of them in the English department alone, out of some dozen departments that lost people. This is unacceptable, and we need to fight against it constantly. This is criminal because people run the risk of losing their health care, and after all these years of working for job security, they don't have it now. And that's what we got to fight against. We have to keep fighting against, because every chance CUNY and the colleges will take, they will want to chip away our hard-won rights we've run through bargaining. And the 3-year contract is one of them. I don't have one myself. I aspire to one, so why am I worried about it? Well, think about this. If they succeed in keeping those 36 out of BCC, imagine what they're going to do for us next. That's why we have to fight and fight together. Remember, we have to always make sure that none of us get injured and none of us have to feel in danger of losing our jobs or losing our health care. And for those 36, we need to continue to fight. After all, we cannot let them get away with this. This is something that's been going on, and we're not going to fight till we make sure that all the students at BC have all the professors they need, and in class size they're not too huge and overloaded, as has been talked about before. So let's stand together and bring back those 36 with 3-year contracts, job security. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel, for this wonderful message of resistance. Yes, absolutely. Now I'm handing over to our treasurer, Sharon Persinger.
I'll try to be short. The thing I've noticed through the day is that since CUNY decentralized the decision-making on so many of the elements of dealing with this COVID crisis, all of us in the PSC had this feeling of being hit from all directions, of being confused, of not knowing where to look and how to react. But it did provide an organizing opportunity because it required a local campus by campus, college by college, chapter by chapter reaction. And I could spend time telling you some of the things, the way the health and safety watchdogs have provided guidance to the people in various chapters about how to look at one of these reopening plans. I could tell you about all the planning and story gathering that went into developing the grievance that we are pursuing about CUNY's contract violations in the way they did not do the 3-year appointments. But the thing that I really want you to take away from this is that yes, it's been a very difficult struggle, but the fight back has led us to be more organized. On each campus, in each chapter, we've done organizing of socially distanced in-person actions, of car caravans. You've seen the videos. You've heard about the organizing conversations. You've heard people tell about their work on campus reopening committees. You've seen all the other work that people are doing. That made us stronger for the continued fight. And that's what we're going to talk about next. What comes next?
Okay, thank you, Sharon. And I think that's a very important place to start. This fight, even though we shouldn't have had to wage it, has made us stronger. And we already heard today, just in the course of today, 2 areas of progress. I don't want to overstate them, but we heard from Tina Moore that Hunter has been forced to start considering other buildings because the building that normally houses the school is completely unsafe. And we heard that at Queensborough, adjuncts who were laid off have been reinstated, have been rehired. That's not enough. I do not want to say that's enough. In fact, that should spur us to fight more. And so what we've heard about tonight are 3 of the demands that are among the union's 10 that have proven hardest to win. And it's not a surprise. We need complete safety on reopening. What Jeannette Batiz described today is atrocious. Nobody should feel unsafe when they go back to work. It's completely atrocious what she went through today. That violates CUNY's legal obligation to provide a safe workplace if she is not safe there. And that's a critical issue. The class size issue. Every single person who has ever taught a class knows how important that is. And we all know that when people pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to send their children to private colleges and they can afford it, what they're paying for is small class size. That's exactly what they're paying for. And that's exactly what is being, I would say, deliberately denied to our students. And then finally, in some ways, the most egregious of all is just treating the most vulnerable workers at CUNY as disposable. The people without whom CUNY would not have survived through this series of budget cuts and devastating underfunding to CUNY. CUNY would not have survived without the willingness of 12,000 adjuncts to keep working even when their situation has been incredibly difficult. And yet we find in this situation, CUNY at the first chance treats them as disposable. So these are hard issues, and we need to go forward. And I think we've seen today that the union has been able to push the CUNY administration, and we have made partial progress on these demands and many others. But on these 3, the battle has been harder. And so has what I would call the root battle to create an alternative to austerity, and even deeper, to change the conceptualization to show that austerity is not inevitable. And that underlies each of these. The PSC has used many, many levers of power to address these issues. You've heard about them today: legislative, litigation, protests, as Sharon said, campus-based organizing. We've had to get stronger, and we have needed to, and we have done it. Work actions to demand our rights, hundreds of grievances, alliances with anti-racist and community groups, media campaigns, legislative campaigns, alliances in City Hall and even Washington. And we will continue to use all these forms of actions. But I'm sure if you've been watching today, you've seen too that the PSC is all of us. These actions are not being done by 5 people, 10 people, 20 people in the central PSC office. They wouldn't be possible if it weren't for you. You see the range of people who have created new ways to act and new ways to develop power. That's what this is all about, developing power sufficient to dislodge the power we're fighting against. So I say to everyone who's been watching, but you maybe haven't stepped up today and you partly are feeling left out, this is the day to become active. This is the day to join. Join with the health and safety folks. Join the adjunct struggle. Join the legislative work. And how do you do it? Look on our website, find the name of your chapter chair, and send an email to that chapter chair tonight. Let him or her know that you want to get involved, or just send an email to the PSC mailbox and tell us you want to be involved. This is your union. You've heard today about the people making it our union. Change it, make it the union that it should be. It will be stronger if each one of us plays an active part. But The underlying question today, even with that huge expansion of activism, that hardening of our muscles to be able to fight locally that Sharon described, the expansion to all parts of the union, there's still an underlying question, I think, that I have felt in almost every panel today. And that was the question of power. How do we gain the power to prevail against such big forces and for such difficult issues as the ones we've heard about, even just the three tonight: class size, adjunct layoffs, and safety and reopening? And how do we get the power, whether it's in coalitions, in alliances, whatever way, how do we get the power to shift the entire tax structure in New York State and show that, in fact, there is money for CUNY? The issue, the question, or the complaint that there is no money is a completely false and deliberately misleading statement. There is money. It's a question of whose life matters, whose life is important, and where the money goes. How do we get the power really to force the full change we need from the Hunter campus administration, or to regain the jobs of 3,000 adjuncts? And how really do we marshal bigger power in this crisis, not to let it become a moment of what Naomi Klein calls the shock doctrine, disaster capitalism, where a disaster is used to further entrench capitalist structures and make the kind of austerity moves that the capitalists have been waiting to make all along. But how do we turn this into an opportunity to make CUNY a real people's university and not let it be a reinsertion of the old and deadly normal? It's a hard question. And to answer it, I will say that the PSC has used, and we will continue to use, every lever of power that you have heard about tonight and you've seen so beautifully. And I think we will need to do more. And I look forward to our next 24-hour marathon in a month or maybe more. And we can report back on what we've done since this one. But workers, specifically workers in labor unions, have a unique power that has been, I would say, underused in this national and global crisis. We as workers have the power to strike. As workers, we have the power to withhold our labor. And that's a very mighty power, as we have seen through history. The PSC leadership believes that it is time to have a public conversation within our union about whether the union should consider a strike. That's a big issue, a big question, a powerful one, and an important one to discuss together. We're not going to be able to discuss it fully tonight. That's what we have to do together. And I think it could be an incredibly rich discussion. But when you listen to the speakers today, and when we hear the cries for funding, when we hear about the cruelty of cutting hundreds of people off from health insurance during a pandemic, when we have experienced the refusal even to bargain over the impact of changes in class size, the subject CUNY is legally bound to negotiate, PSC members have to begin to ask whether withholding our labor, with all the risks that brings, would be an effective source of power in this moment. I don't consider it a solved question. I consider it a question for us, the beautiful power and thinking power of this union together, to talk about today and in the weeks and months to come. I believe, and the PSC leadership has talked about this, we believe that we need a form of leverage commensurate with the problem. And that's what we've been hearing about all day. What leverage can we have that is commensurate with what we face? And the PSC leadership believes that the PSC should at least have a conversation with members about whether a strike is commensurate to that, whether it's strategic, whether it's something we can do, should do, and is right for us to do. I want to say clearly, especially for the legal folks, I want to say clearly that I'm not calling for a strike, and the PSC is not organizing a strike at this time. I say that because New York State has incredibly prohibitive laws about strikes, the New York State Taylor law. So the PSC is not calling for a strike now, and we're not setting a date for a strike authorization vote. But we are saying, as we said in July, we said that if our 10 demands for today, August 26th, were not met, all options would be on the table, including increased legal action, which we're doing, legislative action, which we're doing, and preparation for a strike. We also included votes of no confidence, which I think many are ready to take. The demands, we have to say, have not been fully met, and some have not been met at all. So all of those options, including the option of preparing for a strike, need to stay on the table. It's a big question, and one we can talk about intensely. I think we're perfectly positioned to talk about it in the weeks ahead. Strikes have typically been waged when everyone in a union faces the same danger or the same threat, and that's what we've seen in most labor strikes, but not all. And we in the PSC have experienced very different levels of threat and very different working conditions this year. The COVID emergency is facing some of us, and CUNY's distribution of vulnerability is different across the different parts of the union, as we've heard tonight. And also, as members differently positioned with job security, we heard that from Angel Martinez tonight, we also face different risks. So as unionists together, we have to be honest with each other about those conditions and those risks, but also about the power that we need and whether we're willing to try to attain all the possible power we could. And we also, though, might need to expand our imagination about what a strike could be. Our national union, the AFT, has already said that it will support safety strikes if necessary. And we've seen climate strikes, strikes against racism, strikes for justice. Maybe this is a moment to expand our imagination. And I look forward, I've had such an expansion today, I look forward to doing that with you in the coming weeks and months. Having the conversation itself would be an expansion of our power, not just imagination, but of our power. The Taylor Law in New York State puts a very firm prohibition on organizing for or calling a strike. But the Taylor Law should not be allowed to impose what William Blake called mind-forged manacles. We cannot allow it to shackle our imaginations. So let's expand the conversation. Let's talk together about whether a strike would give us the power we need, whether it would encourage other unions to stand tall and to take action, or whether we would be left alone, whether we would be able to create a new beginning for resurgence in the labor movement that is ready and able to respond to this crisis, and what our core demands would be, what we would need. So there's a lot to talk about, but it's an important conversation to have together when we come up against the question of power, and we in a union have some more potential power. How can you become a part of this conversation? Perfect way. You can right away, tonight, join our brigade of folks who are engaging in member-to-member conversations. Our member-to-member conversers have held 3,000 one-on-one conversations this summer, but we need about 10 times that number in order to talk to everyone. And right on the website underneath this live stream, you can see a place to sign up to join the group that does one-on-one member-to-member conversations. I guarantee you there's some of the richest conversations we'll have this year. So join us, and that's a key way that you help to build the conversation also in public forums like your chapters. And as we do that, let's rededicate ourselves to all the work we've heard about from members today as we're expanding that conversation, considering what kind of power we need and could use. Let's also rededicate ourselves to the work we've been hearing about, the careful, precise work on health and safety plans, the slow and delicate building of alliances and legislative support, the launch of bold new legislation to reimagine CUNY itself, and with that, to enforce wage parity for adjuncts and benefit parity through the law, the public battle against the racist warehousing of our students in overlarge classes, battle against speed up in our workload. For those who are here, we've all, many experiencing speed up. And then the battle of solidarity, as Tina Moore talked about, with our members. We represent members who teach in K through 12 in the Hunter campus schools. And also the beautiful work that we've seen today of strengthening our chapters and helping to bring each other to voice. We have to continue all of that work and do it on even a more massive scale, even if we are, and especially if we are, considering any discussion about withholding labor. So let's deepen and expand that. And I have confidence in us that we will make good decisions and that we will build that power together. I have confidence in you, PSC members, even more than ever after watching today. So I want to end with a message to Chancellor Matos Rodriguez and the whole CUNY administration. We who work at CUNY, whose thousands of hours of donated labor through this crisis make the institution work. We are represented in all our power and diversity and yearning and rage today, and we will be for several hours more on this online action. Listen to us. We are tired of hearing that there is no alternative to budget cuts, that there is a conflict of interest between student needs and adjuncts needs. We are tired of your stalling over the major demands at the bargaining table and your refusal to engage with the unions on every campus on reopening. We are tired of being taken for granted, dismissed, cut off from health insurance, and discarded. PSC members stand together, and we have a courageous, life-affirming, anti-racist vision for CUNY that we are not afraid to advance. We need someone in this moment to advance that vision, and PSC members are the ones doing it. PSC members will stand up, and we are standing up for the workplace and the university we deserve and the people of New York deserve. So I say to the CUNY management, stop pretending that the way to save CUNY is to accept austerity and assume that the workers will tolerate intolerable losses of jobs and support. We have a different vision for CUNY. It is hard won. It is lived every day. So listen to us. The leadership is here among our members. Thank you very much. And now we will open the door. I think there are some questions and comments from members, and I'll turn it over to, I think, Sam Lewis and Jorge Guzman or Andrea on our, who's going to lead us through that. Andrea. You're on mute, Andrea.
I'm looking at the questions that were submitted. Unless Jorge and Sam have another plan, I can go through them and read them in the order in which they came in. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the first question is, who is dedicated to verifying that the information from colleges on reopening is accurate and up to date?
Great question. I'll start with that, and then Sharon or someone else might want to join in. Fortunately, and some of you didn't get to see earlier today, we had a really great segment with the leaders of our health and safety watchdogs, and they have been incredible. I mean, one thing they reminded us of today is that in 2009, they called for a pandemic preparation task force at CUNY to work so CUNY would be ready. Of course, CUNY did not respond and did not do that with us. But we have a team that includes public health experts and also industrial hygiene experts and instructors who've instructed many of the inspectors around the city. And they, together with other PSC staff, have gone through every campus reopening plan with a checklist, a very detailed checklist of what needs to be there. But the real answer to the question, I think, is members. And I'm sure that Jean Grassman and Joan Greenbaum and Jackie Elliott from our health and safety watchdogs would say that. The real answer is members, like what Jeannette told us today. All members are invited to join the health and safety watchdogs and get this checklist and make sure that your campus is safe. But I'll just add one thing before maybe others speak to this. In some cases, because the issue we're learning so much is ventilation with indoor spaces, now that the science has changed on COVID-19 and its transmission. And because so many CUNY buildings were incredibly compromised on ventilation before, there are some buildings where the union's position is that we must have a mutually agreed upon CUNY management and the PSC outside independent inspector to verify that the building is safe. We just can't take their assurances for it. So one answer to your question is that the one place we can't go is just to listen to CUNY say it's okay, because this is an institution that said it was okay in February when we wrote to them and said that there are buildings where there's no running water and you can't wash your hands. So we can't just take assurances. We have to use our eyes and ears and noses, as Joan would say, look at our checklist. And in some cases, the union is insisting on independent inspectors.
Anyone else, or should I continue? Okay. There was the next question, Barbara answered some of it, prospects for PSC going on strike, but it ends with the question, if not a strike, what are our other options to achieve these vital needs for our colleagues? Can I start by a little bit with that? So, you know, as people know, we have had a strike authorization vote in the past, this union. That was a contract fight. And what we said then and what we would say now is that our decisions are collective, considered, responsible decisions that will lead us somewhere, that will lead us to victory and to success. That's why we make the decisions that we make, because we think there's a road to success. As you heard my remarks earlier, we have been working with some of the most progressive unions in this city, and we will continue to do so. And we are always urging them to be more, to join us in more militant actions and more stronger statements, and really representing the beliefs that we have in the PSC. And that's been a great thing to do. But like our members, you know, the union movement is all over the place in New York City, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I think that it's an exciting moment. We have, as was mentioned earlier, we've shown so much this summer, not to mention today, you know, of what we're capable of. I think we need to take this moment to build forward and continue working. This is not like a contract moment. It's not a contract that we can decide, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's really complicated, as we heard today. Members have such different experiences right now. This crisis affects members in such different ways. So the most important thing for us as we move forward and as we have these conversations that Barbara has discussed, that has described, is unity. Unity that Jeannette mentioned earlier. We can't come to any agreement or move forward in any way without commitment to being unified and commitment to understanding and fighting for each other. So to get back to his question, if not a strike, what other options are there achieve these vital needs for our colleagues? And we have discussed other options, and we will continue, and we will listen to members and hear what they think strong options would be. But would anybody on this panel like to speak more on that? Colleagues? Sharon, James, Nivedita, David?
There's so many options, but I think everybody's holding back so they don't monopolize the conversation. You know, I think James could talk about continuing the pressure right there in the college, working directly with department chairs. That's proven very important. And we're also at Medgar Evers, where David is working on that. We can certainly, and we intend to go much broader, more public on the issue of class size, because that is an issue that affects every student. It's a racial justice issue. It's a workload issue. Affects other unions in New York City because their children go to CUNY, their workers' children. The health and safety issue, there are many ways to get aggressive on that. And you've talked, Andrea, today about the power of some of our legislative work, getting alliances, building those alliances so that when we make a stand in Albany for something like new taxes and fair taxation, the governor and others are not able to drive a wedge between us and say, well, I'll do something for the housing advocates, but not for PSC. We have to stand together, and we have much more power that way. So those are some of the things. I did see another question pop in, is somebody asking if we could say again how they can sign up to be part of the one-on-one conversations. And I believe there is a sign up button, yes, right on the homepage of the website that says call your colleagues. And you just click on that and magic, you start calling your colleagues.
Right. So one question we have here is what happened with the CARES money?
Who wants to answer?
Guess who has it?
Guess who has it? CUNY Central. Okay, the CARES money, and somebody can join in here. Please don't let me take all the time. The CARES money came through the federal act, and it was allocated on the basis, somebody said this earlier today, on the basis of the number of students at CUNY and the number who are eligible for Pell Grants. So CUNY got a total of $251 million, and 118 of that came with the strict requirement that it be spent on direct aid to students. The remaining 132 of that didn't come with that restriction, and it came with a provision in the law that called for universities that receive the CARES Act money to, that says that they shall continue in employment their employees to the greatest extent practicable during the coronavirus disruptions. And it was on the basis of that, it's on the basis of that that we've taken CUNY to court. We tried to get a preliminary injunction to get the adjunct layoffs immediately reversed. Not surprisingly, that was turned down, but we have not finished fighting. And at the same time that we were showing that the law demands that it's part of the intention of the CARES Act to spend that money to keep people employed, we had the chancellor testifying in Albany saying that he didn't intend to spend a penny of that 132 million on keeping adjuncts employed. And that's where they tried to set up the false sort of opposition between student needs and adjunct needs. Keeping adjuncts on payroll is serving students. It's obvious. So far, and also the CARES Act money was supposed to be allocated college by college. It was allocated college by college. CUNY Central is holding on to that until the final budget is done. So there are a lot of problems with how they have held and controlled that money.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars either. I mean, in some places, just a few $1 million would make a world of difference. I mean, there's no way that in a city this rich that Medgar should have to release over 30% of its part-time faculty, close to 70 people. I mean, the college is a few $1 million in debt. Just a few $1 million could make a huge amount of difference. We're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to take us back for 1 second to the earlier question about ideas. Many members have also talked about the idea of a vote of no confidence in the chancellor or in college presidents. So that's something that, again, we should think about as a union. What are the pluses and minuses of something like that? It's obviously another big step to do something like that. Next question is, what are we going to do to push back about Hunter Campus Schools administration denying union inspector access to the walkthrough tomorrow?
Who wants to take that on? Okay, I wish Tina were still here. Go ahead, Jeannette, did you want to say something? No, okay. Yeah, Tina Moore, who's the chapter chair at the Hunter Campus Schools, had to get off the phone. And I've been hearing just back and forth today. I wasn't positive that had been definitively established, that we couldn't be in a walkthrough. I'm not sure that is absolutely up to date. So I don't want to comment too much on it. We have done walkthroughs there. Gene Grassman did a walkthrough there in February, and that's when we saw how underprepared the building was. The building's on the Upper East Side, and it's built on the site of a former armory, Park Avenue Armory, with the one on 94th Street. And weirdly enough, they built a new building, a school, and they built it to look like an armory. So it's got these big, thick brick walls and tiny slot windows and lots of classrooms with no windows at all, and a very old ventilation system. And that's the problem. So our inspectors should be allowed to do a walkthrough, and we will fight to ensure that they can. That's all I can say right now. And if others know more that's up to date, please chime in.
So this is answering a question, who should adjuncts contact if they've been non-reappointed or if they don't yet know if they'll have classes or hours, if they're at KCC, LaGuardia, or Gutman. There is an online form, and adjuncts can find the form by going to the Actions and Resources for Adjuncts in the Issues section of the PSC website. They can also call the union. And another question was about how can we sign up to have those conversations about the possibility of a job action or strike. And the answer to that was that they can go to the homepage of the website and click on Call Your Colleagues. It's the first thing under the video player for today's action. Okay, so now we have someone asked about how many people are on today. That's a good question. I don't think we have that answer yet, but over a couple of thousand have signed the public pledge, which is pretty awesome. That is great. We've had that pledge going, but to have 2,200 in one day, that's great. Okay, here's another question. Do we anticipate further cuts to adjuncts?
Who wants to take that? Nivedita or Sharon? James? James, take a stab.
No, I would love to say no, right? We don't anticipate because we're too fierce, and now they're scared of us. Look, I mean, we heard on a previous segment today, I think it was Jonas from Fiscal Policy Institute talking about the really dire forecasts in front of us in New York State, $9 billion in debt. I mean, nobody can look, at that and worry about, not just adjunct layoffs, but who will they come after next? And so I think the critical question, right, is what kind of organizing are we prepared to do in the days and weeks directly in front of us to forestall the next wave and the next wave? Piece two of that, right, is how many of us are willing to get behind the kind of mobilization that's going to be required to move the New Deal for CUNY, right? So whether you're someone who believes in direct action, or if you're someone who believes in legislation and advocacy, or all of the above, the underlying question is those organizing conversations. And I want to say about those conversations, I'm not somebody who likes to jump on the phone and talk to strangers, okay, even if they're my colleagues on my campus. But the thing that happens when you engage in those conversations is not only do you learn about your colleagues' issues, right, and it makes you a smarter advocate for them, but you also create a connection with that person and a link to the union, and that's critical. You might not get them to do a specific thing in that moment, but they know then about what your union is engaged in. And you can also do that phone banking collectively so that it has a transformative effect, not only on the person on the receiving end of the call, but on the folks making the call themselves. We are ourselves transformed through the struggle. That's really the answer to how we beat back the next attempt at adjunct jobs, I feel.
Anyone else? We have a lot of questions, a favorite here we've heard, asking about cutting executive pay, including pushing for a pay cut for the chancellor. I think the way to start that one, is that, sure, that would be nice, but that's not going to get us very far. I mean, we often have exposed high salaries. It's not just the chancellor, it's many others in administrative positions on different campuses, but the money we need is huge. New Deal for CUNY is billions of dollars, bringing into capital and everything else. So, we certainly I wouldn't feel that that's something we should spend a lot of time on. I mean, we have a governor who has more budget control than any governor in the history of this country. We have a governor who is not following the will of over 90% of the people and taxing the wealthy in this country, in this state. So I think we really need to think about what we focus on. And I think raising those issues, having that kind of fight, winning legislators over to figure out ways to force this governor to follow the will of the people and to follow the will of the legislators. So, it would be great to cut executive compensation down, and maybe that's something that it's happened at other colleges, but I just don't think that's the main focus. Certainly it's not the main focus, and fiscally it will not do anything much. Maybe others want to speak to that. Okay.
We only have 5 minutes, so.
Okay. How much? Okay, we want to close. So, yes, of course, we can have chapter meetings about whatever we want. Is there a possibility of getting health care extended for adjuncts who are still teaching but have gone under 6 contact hours?
I'll just take that quickly. Great question. And I've been working
after that.
Sorry, okay. I've been working on that with the mayor's office directly and the city labor commissioner. We're pushing really hard for that because there is a threshold that adjuncts have to meet in order to stay on health insurance, and part of this austerity, purging or whatever, and disposal of people has been to reduce the courses that some adjuncts teach. So I would say it's going to be a hard push, and in the next few days, we may be calling on you in the ways that James talked about, getting behind what we're doing. We may be calling you in for a very hard push on exactly that issue, because for most adjuncts, the health insurance would end on August 31st. We were able to get it extended right through the summer, but August 31st is coming very soon. And we need the kind of unity Andrea talked about and the push that James described. We may need it on exactly that issue. So thank you.
Do we have a sense of the different scenarios that might unfold depending on the final state federal budget outcome? Do we know when that is, and is it possible to mobilize in advance of what the results will be? Maybe that's your closing out question, Barbara.
Oh yeah, are we at that time? Okay, well maybe somebody else wants to say something. We just have 3 minutes. Nivedita or Sharon, you want to say something first on any one of the others, or Jeannette or David, and then I'll say something. Nivedita, unmuting.
Or Jeannette.
Yeah. Or Jeannette.
Any hand up?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, we just have to stand in solidarity and together and fight together for all of us, because it's also part-time COTs that are without jobs, and their medical benefits are going to be finished as well at the end of August. So we have to all come together and fight for our members. That's all I wanted to say.
I'll echo that, and also echo James saying the same thing. I mean, regarding all of the scenarios, can there be more adjunct layoffs? Can they come after tenure? Can the budget be really dismal? Unfortunately, we don't know. Yes, it could well be, but what happens in the end, it's not a static reality. That's what we have to remember. It's also what we do with it. So it's not just they're doing it to us, it's also what we are doing to push back. So it's a dynamic sort of a process where we have a role in what happens in the end. That's, I'll just leave it at that. I think the point is to organize and fight back, and yeah.
I mean, the city has announced huge cuts, and the state can also announce 10, 20% across the board cuts of different agencies and institutions. That is not impossible. We haven't seen movement from the feds again, and it's a real threat. I mean, in terms of, can we do something in advance? I mean, those are the things that we heard about today. These are the things we've been doing in advance. Do we need to do more? Do we need to involve more people? Do we need to increase and solidify our alliances and our colleagues and our coalitions? Yes. And that's why, that's been probably the main message of today, is we've done a lot this summer. We've involved more people than ever, and we have a long way to go. And the threats facing us are huge and unpredictable, and change from day to day, in fact. So we need to stay on it. We need to increase and our power and use our imaginations that we saw today, and our intellects that we saw today, and our allies, and really continue this fight and expand it, and just become more powerful and do more of this, and come up with other ideas and other solutions. Barbara, why don't you?
Yeah, I'll just say in closing, I mean, it was great to hear from all of you. So impressive. And just to maybe pick up on a few things, there's more to say on the federal scenario, but maybe we can say it later. That Andrea was right in saying the real source of our power is unity as a union. And we build that in part by having hard conversations together, public conversations in our chapters, and even by having disagreements, and by having the kinds of conversations that James talked about that change the initiator as well as the recipient of that call. And also, I want to stress that what we heard from James, Nivedita, and others throughout tonight, that we can help to make the political conditions of this moment. We can make it a moment in which it becomes less and less possible to cut public universities, just as teachers across the country made it a little less possible to cut teachers and schools. So we can make it a moment in which the conditions, the political conditions are changed. That's a huge task, but we've seen it done through history. We are seeing it being done right now around us by the Fight for Black Lives movement. So I think the challenge in front of us it's very big, but it's important and it's worth our investment of time. So yes, I think we can change those conditions, and to do it, we have to have real unity and that struggle among ourselves, and honesty, and those hard conversations, willingness to expand, willingness to think anew, willingness to take some risks together. So thank you, everyone, tonight. Really great to be with you. And I can't wait to see the segment coming up with our own George Sanchez and a group of CUNY student artists. So stay tuned.
Great.